I think if what we would have done, it'd be better, is if when we looked at the theories, and then from the theories we looked at each individual case study and see how that applied. When you come to your exam and you think about what theories you can apply, it's like more and more gender representations and things like that. You could just think immediately of different case studies to apply to it.
How would this have helped?
In such a way that you wouldn't have to think of a case to then expand on it. You'd be able to think of a theories to apply to your question and then expand on the case studies.
So you think a lot more case studies?
Not necessarily a lot more, but just when, instead of looking at a case study, then thinking about theory, we should look at a theory, then think about case studies and how they could apply. Because when you come to the exam, you don't think, right, one case study. Like in this exam with the bill, you can't think of one crime drama and then evolve on that. You think of a theory that could apply, such as gender, and then think of case studies from that gender.
So you think that the case study should be theory-led?
Yeah.
So you should have a theory,
then a case study for it.
Well, obviously it'd be best to go over the basic theories in class, then again you can like research your own independent theory to apply to the theme of the exam. Just to think out the box and expand your knowledge.
Theory examples you might have thought out of the box.
Well, there's like things like some audience theory. I research things like life matrix, like some really complex stuff that relates to use and gratifications, things like that. Just
Can you explain? Life matrix.
it's similar to the classification of audiences, whereas there's like explorers and inspirers and all that, just more in depth. It applies it to personalities.
Really? Yeah. Like psychographic.
More or less.
I think the main problem when people are faced with that big 40-mark question is like where to start, and that's more an essay problem than a media problem. So just if you read a lot on the subject, you'll get into the style of writing that people have for when they're talking about either adverts or whatever the text is. Just read up on it and then you'll get into that style of writing.
So picking up on the formal style of analysis?
Well, not so much formal, because when you read like a media magazine or just read film reviews are really good.
Right.
Because they talk about what you're going to be talking about in the exam on like a more watered down version.
Yeah.
But they do talk about. So just because whenever I do mine, it's sort of semi-essay, semi-review.
What about structure?
Structure's not that important because it's not an English exam, but just make sure you tie off all your points and you don't just bang it in there for no reason.
Can we talk about psychoanalysis and Freudianism and the Sid Field concept?
I think Sid Field is really useful for when you're starting your coursework. It really helps you sort of give a bit of an aim to your opening.
And did it bring equilibrium, disequilibrium, equilibrium to a different level?
Yeah.
So it moved on from Todaro?
Yeah, it sort of, well, it all links in together, doesn't it? But
Were you working towards a reversal for your storyboard?
Yeah, especially in your storyboard, because you don't just have to talk about what's happening on screen. You can talk about what's going to happen and why, what things are leading to.
Did you have a reversal in your storyboard?
I can't remember about that.
Alright, talk about the psychoanalysis.
Psychoanalysis. It's really easy to apply the basics of psychoanalysis to film. Really easy. If you want to go more in depth, there's thousands of books on it, and just go on the internet, because most things on the internet to do with films will be about psychoanalysis.
About Hitchcock?
Hitchcock, definitely, if you're going to do about psychoanalysis. But apart from that, don't feel you have to put it in, because it's not like part of the course, it's just extra.
If I did it again, I'd probably watch about 100,000 of my favourite films, then try and relate the case studies and theories that I've got to my favourite films, so that when I get the piece, I can relate them because I know those films. Yeah.
Right, so it's from a personal angle.
Yeah.
Take the theory that you cover in class and relate it to your personal library.
Yeah, because you know your favourite films, you'll have watched them 100,000 times.
Or CDs.
Yeah, CDs, whatever, video games, anything.
Well, for one, once you say you're going to do something, it's best to go ahead with it rather than,
Pontificate.
yeah, more or less. And organise it the way what's best for everyone.
What about preparation in terms of clothes and scripts?
Yeah, you'd sort of like scripts out especially, so like no one's like stumbling so it's just not chaos during filming.
So that day when you actually get together, talk about the day. So what do you mean? You get a script a week in advance to everybody?
More or less, and we go over it so we know what we're saying, so it's not like looking down at a script every 10 minutes.
I think, don't be lazy, because I was lazy. And when I watch it, I wish I'd perfected some shots, because there's a few wiggles and wobbles and it just haunts you forever, doesn't it?
Could you be specific about what you've shot? And what would you have done differently?
If it's not how you want it, do it again. And I suggest working with, when you're going to work with your friends, make sure it's just one at a time. Because if you're doing some acting and no one's like a professional actor, and if all your friends are stood there watching, they can't do it. And you've got to make sure you get what you want, or else you're just going to be disappointed and you might not get the grade you want.
Use adults to make it look more professional, because there's not many films where it's just like loads of sixth formers just running around. And
what did you do?
I got my dad to play the villain for most of it, but there was some problems with that because some of it was filmed at sixth form and I couldn't get him to come in. But for the shots that I did with my dad, it looked good.
A bit more in depth on like lighting or camera work?
Yeah, but I'll say like the technical aspects of making a film rather than just the theory. So lighting, camera shots.
Do you think people should do their own research on Hitchcock, say?
Yeah, I say
worthwhile.
Nothing wrong with independent research, like just expanding knowledge on the subject.
What about stealing shots or echoing shots?
Yeah, stealing shots.